Republican Senator Josh Hawley is planning to object to the certification of the November election. So now the process, of course, we've been going through this long process since the election of certifying results and all that stuff. And on January 6th, thankfully, it will be over. And then, of course, Joe Biden, after January 6th, takes office on January 20th. But first, the Electoral College results have to be certified by Congress. And now this will be a joint session of Congress, literally the last step in the process of Joe Biden becoming the 46th president of the United States, to which, great, that means Donald Trump's out of office, which means the next 4 years, we can deal with milquetoast neoliberalism as opposed to damn near fascism. Still terrible, but we can deal with neoliberalism a little bit better than almost outright fascism. Okay, so now anyway, Hawley is a right-wing, calls himself a populist, right? And he's done, let's just say that he's smarter than the average Republican, at least when it comes to getting people on their side. For example, he worked with Bernie Sanders to try to push, $2,000 checks out to the American people, which is being blocked by Republicans like Mitch McConnell. But he's trying, right? But here, this is where he is appealing to the Republican base, because he is claiming that the election has been illegitimate. In fact, according to Axios, Hawley is alleging that states had failed to follow their own election laws and that big tech has interfered in the election on behalf of Joe Biden. Big tech. Oh, so now you're against corporations. That's weird. Republicans generally aren't against giving corporations massive tax cuts, right? No, of course. You try to take away those giant tax cuts for the rich, suddenly, for the corporations, suddenly those same corporations that you were railing against, big tech, I can't stand big tech. Suddenly they have become the saintly job creators that we must protect at all costs. Well, which is it? For the record, by the way, there are many issues that I have with tech companies. Silicon Valley, right? For one, there's labor practices. They're atrocious. We need union representation. There's also issues of sexism in the workplace, okay? There's also the fact that many of these companies don't pay taxes. They also unevenly enforce their own terms of service. They also give advantages to established news entities on both the left and right. Fox News, for example, the Daily Wire. Facebook elevates the Daily Wire and Fox News while also downplaying indie progressive news, right? But tends to prop up places like MSNBC, CNN, etc., the established news. And they do this, of course, through algorithm changes, all right? They also collect and sell individual personal data and sell it to third-party advertisers, so on and on. Okay, so there's a lot of issues here, a lot of problems with big media, right? Big tech. But that's not what Hawley and Trump are talking about, okay? That's not why they're angry at these tech companies, at the Facebooks and the Twitters, okay? They're mad because Twitter has been labeling false tweets false. That's it. They put a disclaimer in there. And then, of course, there's this whole thing like conservatives are convinced, man. They're convinced, like, oh, I can't believe these tech companies are against us. Why? Because they banned some of the shittiest users on there using their own terms of service. I mean, they're like, oh, how dare you crush my First Amendment rights? You don't have First Amendment rights on Twitter. You know how you can get them? You're going to love this. Your head will explode as a conservative. You nationalize these companies. You nationalize them, i.e. make them owned by the state, the United States, and then suddenly you will have all the free speech that you can handle. Oh, but you don't want to do that. Of course not. Of course not. All right, so now, as I said, they can do what they want when it comes to banning people because they're a private corporation. They also have the right to employ fact checkers and put out disinformation warnings. They're not the government. This is not a First Amendment issue. It's not a free speech issue. Now, again, I've raised this before. There are issues here with how much reach these companies do have and how they can be gatekeepers of information, gatekeepers in getting out information and content. And so, again, that is something that we're going to have to deal with. All right, we are going to have to deal with this because of how, pervasive the spread of misinformation really can be on these social media platforms and what that can mean to our discourse and our politics. Again, you want to fix that? Well, maybe you can nationalize it. But instead, of course, their solution here is to eliminate Section 230 and basically obliterate old discourse on the internet. Now, the reason, again, is because Donald Trump and the right wing are very thin-skinned. They can't handle when people put out a false, or a fact check or a false rating on one of their tweets. So they want these companies to be punished by allowing these companies to get sued for the stuff other people, the users, put on their platforms. So that's their issue. Now, as far as the state issue that Hawley cites, Pennsylvania, and that's one of the states that, remember, Texas sued Pennsylvania, Michigan, I believe Wisconsin, and Georgia for basically expanding their mail-in voting, okay? They're allowed to amend their election laws. Now, Texas, Ken Paxton, he launched this ridiculous lawsuit. It got immediately rejected by the Supreme Court when he tried to bring it to the court. And basically what he was trying to say is like, well, Texas is affected when Pennsylvania changed their voting rules to allow easier voting because then Donald Trump didn't win, and that makes Texas sad. Essentially, that's a paraphrase, okay? Well, it turns out that these states have the ability to change their own election laws, especially during a pandemic, to adapt to the pandemic, to adapt to the fact that you don't want tons of people, thousands of people in lines and inside voting booths or inside of, things like schools where, or stadiums or where these elections are held. You don't want people in close proximity during a pandemic where you can easily transmit a virus. And so, again, that's the issue here. Many states have made voting more accessible, and they don't like that. Now, I happen to think more voting good, less voting bad. I like it when more people vote. I like it when we actually do democracy. But see, Republicans, they see it the opposite way because, well, when more people vote, and this has been admission by many Republicans throughout the years, sometimes accidental, sometimes it's right in your face. They say, well, when more people vote, we lose. So guess what? We don't want more people voting. We want less people voting because, well, again, that's the only way that we can keep our power because we're not popular. Our positions are not popular. So now, here's the thing, okay? Republican policies generally are not popular because usually it just involves giving more and more money to rich people. The Republican Party is a giant money funneling scheme to the wealthiest Americans and corporations. We know this, right? But here's the thing. Trump and some, Republicans now, like Hawley, every once in a while take a populist position. Take the $2,000 checks. Again, that's a Bernie Sanders idea, right? Bernie Sanders back in March is like, hey, you know what we should do? We should get everybody a $2,000 a month UBI. Along with some other stuff, cancellation of rent. So Hawley picks that up, the one-time $2,000 check, and says, okay, let's do it. Again, that's a populist position, right? Bernie Sanders also opposed TPP. Donald Trump picked that up and said, okay, yes, let's go with that because it's a populist position. And so economic populism that a lot of right-wingers tend to use is actually left-wing. And so people like it because it's progressive. People are more progressive than they realize, even in this country, which has massively shifted to the right. Our Overton window is way to the right compared to the rest of the world. But our politics does not match, I should say our representation does not match the people in this country and how they feel about things. We don't have proper representation. We don't have proper representation. And so that's a problem. So now the right wing will take some of these economic populist issues, and there's a lot of course, distrust towards corporate America on the right wing as well, and the populist right. And they'll mix in things like anti-immigrant stuff, anti-LGBT stuff, right? Trans bathroom bills, okay? And so that's how, that's one of the reasons they're different, okay? Because they push out all of this bad, terrible wedge issues, you know, culture war stuff. And so this is what Hawley also does. This is what all of these so-called right-wing populists actually do. And so that said, Hawley is basically writing what Trump is doing, but trying to do it in a smarter way. And so what he's doing is he's doing this in order to push his own presidential bid. This is to reach out to the Trump base. Okay, and in his statement, he says this: Congress should investigate allegations of voter fraud and adopt measures to secure the integrity of our elections. But Congress has so far failed to act. For these reasons, I will follow the same practice Democrat members of Congress have in years past, and object during the certification process on January 6th to raise these critical issues. Again, that right there is saying, Trump supporters, don't worry. I think that Donald Trump got robbed. Remember that in 4 years, when Donald Trump does not run for office again. Remember that I was the guy who backed Donald Trump. And I was the guy who tried to get you $2,000 checks, just like Donald Trump. And so please vote for me. That's what it is. All right. And so the thing is, of course, is that this is based on bullshit. The Justice Department under Trump found no evidence of voter fraud in this election. None. None. In fact, just about every single court challenge was thrown out. These were Republican judges in a lot of cases that were like, okay, you say that there's massive voter fraud. Can we see some of the evidence? And like, no. Okay, but there is fraud, right? Yes. But you don't have evidence. No. Okay, we're done here. We're done here. This doesn't work. I literally can't do anything if I don't have evidence. And so that was the issue. Now there was probably I think there was like one case that Republicans actually did successfully get a couple hundred ballots thrown out. And it was about postmark ballots that arrived after ballots were no longer supposed to be counted. They got thrown out. So there's your win, right? Now earlier today, you also had Georgia Republicans coming out and saying, no, we got the election right. Joe Biden won Georgia. And they were, looking through to try to find fraud with the whole signature matching thing. So they were matching up signatures, trying to find mismatched signatures. They found like 2 out of thousands of ballots. They found like 2. And that's not even evidence of fraud. And so this is, okay, there is no widespread voter fraud. So that's not what this is about. It's about getting the support of the Republican base so that Josh Hawley can run for president in 2024 and win a Republican primary. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.